Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching India Tonight with me, Sumita Karir, and my colleague Nivedna Prabhu. We're joining you from our Delhi studios this Monday evening. And tonight, we put the spotlight on the big geopolitical story, the SCO Summit, which got wrapped up a few hours back. And of course, the big highlight was the RIC, or the Russia-India-China unity on display. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the time difference between Tianjin and Washington is 12 hours. Tianjin and Washington are 7,000 miles apart. And the geopolitical and economic order they have come to represent today cannot be further apart, Nivedna.
Absolutely, Sumita. In fact, Donald Trump woke up to a very different world just a few hours ago, possibly shocked by the visuals on our screen that we're looking at, and the global headline slamming Washington for alienating India, Sumita.
In fact, the deal maker, rather the self-proclaimed deal maker, that's posted on his Truth Social platform that India has offered almost zero tariffs on US goods.
Well, Sumita, as you pointed out, does that mean Trump is now willing to come to the table after being snubbed by his once best friend Narendra Modi? Well, we're going to be discussing this, but before that, let's go across to what Prime Minister Modi said on India's relationship with Russia.
कठिन से कठिन परिस्थितियों में भी भारत और रूस हमेशा कंधे से कंधा मिलाकर चले हैं। हमारा करीबी सहयोग न केवल दोनों देशों के लोगों के लिए बल्कि वैश्विक शांति, स्थिरता और समृद्धि के लिए महत्वपूर्ण है। एक्सेलेंसी, यूक्रेन में चल रहे संघर्ष के विषय में हम लगातार चर्चा करते रहे हैं। हाल में किए गए शांति के सभी प्रयासों का हम स्वागत करते हैं। हम आशा करते हैं कि सभी पक्ष कंस्ट्रक्टिवली आगे बढ़ेंगे।
All right, so the Prime Minister over there speaking at the SCO Summit, he in fact had two very key bilaterals, one with President Xi Jinping and the other one with President Vladimir Putin. And of course, to understand the optics of it and whether Donald Trump is ready to come to the negotiating table, we're now joined by Ambassador Anil Trigunayat. He's a former Indian diplomat. Also joining us on this live broadcast is David Roche, strategist at Quantum Strategy, and Dr. Rajan Kumar, who's an associate professor at the School of International Studies at JNU. Let me come to you first, Ambassador Trigunayat. Now, it does seem that Donald Trump is rattled, and of course, these pictures of the RSA Troika, they send out a strong message. Would you agree that Donald Trump is, quote-unquote, totally paying attention to the matter?
Well, I don't think so that he is rattled by this RIC per se, because if one knows him, the fact is that he is the one who tries to rock the boat. He wants to be the puppeteer, and that doesn't seem to work now. And therefore, he is creating writing all kinds of truth social posts that seem to tell you that, India is in the wrong. I mean, that is something unacceptable. It is obviously, he has been after India because we are buying Russian oil. That has nothing to do with Russian oil, as I know. Similarly, he has been also telling India that India is a tariff king. I mean, he's only looking at the goods trade. He's not talking about what is happening on our services trade and what benefits the American companies are getting out of it. So it's a very, very unifocal, very myopic approach that President Trump and his team, which is making the things worse, in fact, has been doing it. So India had to move on. India had to find other partners, had to find other equations, and that's precisely what we are doing. Now, in a greater way, China is our second largest trading partner. We have to deal with it, and we have to try to bridge the gap of the trade deficit that we have with China of $100 billion. Our total exports to the United States happens to be somewhere around 80 billion or $85 billion. Now, that we'll have to diversify it. That's important for us. That does not mean that we are going away anywhere from the U.S. relationship. It's an important country, and we'll continue to engage. But that will be on the basis of mutual respect and mutual sensitivities. It cannot happen that he can dictate and then India will fall in line. That cannot happen either with Russia or with China or with the United States. India is no walkover. I mean, that has been shown again and again. to the world, and it's not now, it's been always happening it, and we'll continue to do so because we
To
have
make
to
that opening
take care of
remark
our own national
that
interests.
India is no walkover, and perhaps in that particular action that we're looking at is what's translating. Of course, we'll come back to you to get more perspective, but Dr. Kumar, let me come to you. Thank you also very much for joining us. Given what we're looking at here, this is hours after Modi's car ride with Putin and the warm exchanges that has clearly grabbed eyeballs. Also, we've looked at the global coverage of this, but the timing of what Trump has just said, does that really suggest that, in a sense, they felt compelled to respond?
Could you please tell me what did Trump say? Because I haven't seen that statement. That what you're talking about. Yeah, but
All right.
I
So
wanted
basically, in a nutshell, what he's gone on to state. One is that in his own purview that India has offered to cut their tariff to nothing. He's also gone on to state that it's getting late and India should have cut their tariffs years ago. He's also raked up the Russia oil issue once again.
I've seen that statement, yeah. So essentially, Trump is not meaning anything at all there. What he's saying is that he has been saying for a long time. He is not making any new statement there. I've seen that statement. I was thinking that in case there is some other statement that you are quoting. So he's not making sense at all. There is nothing that new that he's talking about. He has been saying it for a long time, and today he's saying something. Tomorrow he might say something else. The main issue that US needs to understand that, as Ambassador Trivuna rightly said, that India is not in walkover, and the reason why Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting becomes important from India and from Indian perspective, essentially because it wants to send a message to United States and also to Europe that this kind of sanctioning is not acceptable to India, especially when India has been working with the United States so closely on the issue of global partnership, on the issue of the different kind of security agreements, etc., including Quad. After that, so Shanghai Cooperation Organization essentially, in my view, is an instrument through which both India and China they are trying to have a better negotiation strategy with the United States. The reason I'm saying is that even after Shanghai Cooperation Organization, I do not think that the trust between the two countries would be restored. Rather, US will understand that there is a possibility that these countries are trying to explore India, China, and Russia, etc. And tomorrow, if the US doesn't understand, tomorrow there is a possibility. I'm talking about the possibility, not that they're doing it now. There's a possibility that the Russia, India, China can create an energy corridor where Iran can also be partner, Russia can be there, and of course India and China. There is a possibility that these countries can start trading in the local currency. India, Russia already does it, but also with other BRICS or other Shanghai Cooperation Organization countries. There is a possibility that since the WTO and the international trade mechanisms are not working, so there is a possibility that these countries of the global south, they can create an alternative trading mechanism. So US will have to understand, and US, let me tell you that US will come under pressure now. Trump might react in ways, whatever the way he wants to do it, and he's under no control. He is almost is like unguided missile. Sometimes whatever he says, he also doesn't understand. But beyond that, US will have to come negotiate with the countries of the global south because the way they are reacting now, most of the countries of the global south have not come under pressure. Let me tell you, the important countries have not come. The countries which have come under pressure are Japan and countries of the of Europe. And tomorrow, because India is behaving like an independent entity, India is behaving like an important power. So tomorrow, Europe will also start thinking that there is a possibility that Europe can negotiate with India and not come under United States pressure. So India is also sending a message to European country and also to Japan and behaving like a big. India is not trying to appease like a weaker country or a smaller country. So that's an important, I think, strategy in terms of geopolitics. And India.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Dr. Kumar. And in fact, that's good point that you made about India's strategy, and of course, Donald Trump administration essentially coming under pressure with respect to the recent SCO summit and the optics that have come out of the summit. Let me ask you the next question, David. Now, government sources in India here have indicated that India continues to be engaged with the United States and that there are consultations going on. But what essentially will bring Donald Trump to the negotiating table, and how soon will Donald Trump administration realize that perhaps bullying doesn't work with India?
Well, let me put it this way. I have rarely in my nearly 50 years of career seen a country make such an own goal against its own interests as the United States in its treatment of India and other former allies. What they have actually done is to belittle and humiliate not only India, but Europe with its total surrender and Japan with its total surrender, so that its alliances are no longer based upon shared values and respect and even affection. They're based upon economic brutality and hate. Now, you cannot say that the world will be governed in the same way under the former respectful treaties and under what Trump is seeking to achieve now, which is purely mercantile bullying. I would say this. What is truly amazing to me is that Trump, having poured scorn on the BRICS, SCO, the Global South, has now managed to galvanize the Global South, which I will use as a term to include every organization. He's managed to galvanize the Global South into burying its political differences, burying its economic differences, and starting to create something which will be an alternative to the hegemonic order of the United States, which is already breaking down because, as I say, the other members like Japan and Europe are no longer there really except out of necessity. So as that order breaks down, the question comes up, and I will put the question to you. Will the BRICS, will the SCO members be able to bury their political and traditional rivalries and economic confrontations? Will they be able to bury these in the creation of something which really works economically, politically, and ultimately in terms of peace? Because if they do, then there's one quick conclusion. They won't need the US dollar. The dollar would be the big casualty, because if you put together something coherent coming out of the Global South, economically and politically, then essentially, why would you trade in the currency of a third party? And that would be a huge step in the decline of the power of the United States globally. And it is within reach and around the corner. And the question is, will it happen?
Absolutely, and that's the big question. But taking a cue from what you said about the self-goal, and I think a lot of us agree with that, but let me take that to you, Ambassador. Because given the language and the tonality of what Trump has said today and has branded, in fact, the India-US business ties as a one-sided disaster, but from a diplomatic standpoint, how do you read the intent behind this language?
Well, he is still continuing with the same language of threat and using tariffs as the kind of tools. But at the same time, he has himself stopped the negotiations going forward. I mean, that's something the team was supposed to come to India to discuss. And I understand that on July 6th, both sides had agreed to a bilateral treaty format, which when it was put up to President Trump, he just junked it and he asked them to renegotiate. So while you are renegotiating, at the same time, he imposes 25% tariffs and then again another 25%. Now, that clearly shows that the intent is not to resolve the issue, rather to rake it further. And that is that's what has been understood in India. And India has moved on. But at the same time, as you know, that India has maintained a strategic patience and a strategic silence, I would say, because of the reason that it's a very important relationship which we don't want to rock at the moment, because these kind of temporary phenomena occur often in the international discourse. So one has to see at the same time, I believe that There are discussions going on in different ways. For example, we are going to have the military exercises in Alaska between India and USA. We have had the 2+2 meeting in the defense and the foreign security cooperation recently. The United States and India talked about supply of engines. Some deals have been
Right.
signed, 1.5 billion or whatever. So it's not something that
That's right.
it's one of the verticals that is causing a lot of issues between the two countries. And that's the myopic nature of President Trump's
That's right.
very startling comments that he makes. So I think that India, is
Absolutely, Ambassador.
diversifying. That's it.
Right, Ambassador. And this is something, the strategy by the United States administration is something that has only worked against the United States' very own interest. Let me come to you, Dr. Kumar. Now, given on the one hand, Trump and Navarro continue to attack India, but Marco Rubio posted earlier in the day about how India and the United States, they continue to reach ties between the two nations. They continue to reach new heights. There's also been an appointment of an ambassador and envoy for India. Is the United States, in your opinion, essentially playing a good cop, bad cop policy?
Without any doubt, one of the worst thing that I found about this particular kind of politics which Trump is playing out, that it's not just him. The entire team has started speaking against India. And Peter Navarro and then Rubio and Lutnick and a lot of other people. Fortunately, till now, the new ambassador Gore, he has not said anything at all. But let me tell you that the new ambassador himself has been under attack in the United States, where this Elon Musk told him that he's more like a snake. But what I believe that new ambassador is very close confidant of the President Trump, and we hope that he plays a very positive, constructive role in resolving some of the issues which have cropped in the last few years. Yes, US remains an important partner for India without any doubt, for economic reason, for geopolitical reason, for diasporic reason, for technology reasons. But at the same time, let me tell you, the way the international politics, global politics is evolving, we cannot see the evolving politics from the perspective of the past. Because anti-immigration sentiment is going to be strong, which means Indian immigrants are going to be affected. Because U.S. economy is shrinking, the U.S. will not allow will not follow the policy of liberal internationalism the way it pursued in the last few years. This kind of issue has not come up with in the United States in the last 20 years. The last issue that we had, if I remember correctly, it was in 1998 when the US put India under sanction after the nuclear test. But just after 1.5 years, we started renegotiating. So I'm not saying that this kind of thing would remain for a long time. The conflicts or tensions will remain for a long time. India and US will have to negotiate and on the respecting the sensitivity of each other without any doubt. And in international politics, I can tell you that a number of examples where the relations have gone sour, but within few weeks the things have changed. Just to give you one example, if you permit, that just few weeks earlier, Trump said that Putin is a crazy person. Putin is killer. And after few weeks, what happened? That they are meeting in Alaska. So I'm not saying that in international politics, ego is the most important issue for Trump, or the things are going to remain difficult for the two countries. There is a possibility of negotiation without any doubt. And as I said, Shanghai Cooperation Organization is an instrument being used by both India and China to put pressure on the United States, saying that there is a possibility if you do not mend your ways. So there is a possibility, and that's how the international politics is playing out at the moment.
As you pointed out, and taking a cue from what you earlier said about the remarks as well, Ambassador, let me come to you quickly. Given the narrative that we've seen of Navarro, and on the other hand, you have Marco Rubio, who spoke about how important these relations are. In a sense, how do you look at it? Is it divided?
No. There is no divide in that. One guy, as the want of the foreign offices, tries to play it down. The other chaps are directly trying to please President Trump that, sometimes it happens. Then it's like that boss, when he says that, oh, it's getting darker. And then his advisors just go 2 steps further and say, yes, sir, we can see the stars. So you have those kind of people, yes, ma'am, in his cabinet or in his close circle, and that's something that is that's going to continue to play. So I don't attach much significance to either of the statement, whether it's Rubio's or whether it is by by Navarro, frankly, the proof of pudding is in eating. So we'll see how moving forward, how to succeed. India wants good relations with the United States, but it cannot happen only on their terms.
Absolutely, Ambassador. It'll be interesting to see how the Trump administration reacts and rather responds in the coming few days to the developments of today. Let me come to you, David, on the developments of today. Now, it's said that in diplomacy, optics count for a lot. The Prime Minister today took a 45-minute ride, reportedly with President Putin, and government sources have also suggested that the two leaders had a frank conversation on the Ukraine war. So, in a way, India has now become a stakeholder in peace talks with Ukraine willy-nilly. Does that further dent Trump's image? And is that worrisome for Donald Trump?
Well, I'm not sure whether Donald Trump will worry about this specifically. But let's get the Ukraine thing straight. The US was a supporter of Ukraine in terms of arms and finances, on a par with the Europeans for the first 2.5 years of the war. Since Donald Trump took office, the aid stopped and started and stopped and started, but now it is a paid service. That is exactly what the Wagner mercenaries did for Putin. In other words, if you want to have the support, you pay for it. It is, in a sense, a complete abandonment of the sort of values which the US ever stood for. So what this does, it creates a vacuum. And other powers, like India, hopefully can step in and help to achieve a solution, because it is increasingly evident that the President Trump has a kind of cognizant dependence upon Putin, not only for what he thinks about Putin, but for everything he sees or thinks he knows about the Ukraine war. So he is not really, apart from the aid, which is paid for, and the weapons which are necessary, but as a person and as a potentate, in a sense, he is not really somebody who is likely to come up with a solution that ends the Afghan war. Hence, there is room for other nations to make sensible suggestions.
Fair enough, David, as you point that out. But something that I also want to touch upon also is what the Prime Minister did essentially say at the SCO. Ambassador, coming to you, the point of view that Prime Minister Modi did have of embracing multipolarity at the SCO stands, of course, in sharp contrast to Trump's protectionist tone. Are these two competing models of globalization now clearly colliding head-on, if one were to look at it that way?
Actually, if you were to think about what kind of an international order continued to prevail until recently from 1945 onwards, so that was set up and established by the Western countries led by the United States. And unfortunately, they are the ones who have undermined it themselves completely by following unilateralist measures, by following the protectionist measures. And so, therefore, what India is now working is that there should be a greater focus of reviving, rejuvenating, and reforming these multilateral institutions, including UN Security Council, World Trade Organization, and others, which have been stymied by the very country. Because the United States, when he's talking of tariffs, they were virtually banned in the WTO negotiations, but they are going on these bilateral kind of history. So the effort of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or more prominently the three countries, Russia, India, and China, remains towards a multipolar world led by a proper multilateral organization. So therefore, the leaders' declaration at the SCO has repeatedly talked about the UN Charter, the SCO Charter, which are in this, which have certainly not been respected by the countries that were supposed to protect them and to nurture them. And so that's what definitely we are seeing a new kind of a transition taking place. But to what extent will it go remains to be seen, because we are still in between the orders or so-called transitional disorder, as I can put it.
Absolutely, Ambassador, and that's essentially what has also been visible in the joint statement by the SCO, which essentially stated that economic coercion will not be tolerated. Let me take that point across to you, David. Should this formation, the RIC or the SCO formation, be read as a passing phase, or do you think this is going to be a more permanent phenomena?
More permanent phenomena, because clearly the US is destroying its own power base. That creates a vacuum, and it needs to be fulfilled. And what the US has attempted to do is to recast world relationships as a mercantile business. In other words, if you want to have a good relationship with the US, you have to pay. You have to put in X billion. Everything is in billions of money into the US, and the US is going to keep 90% of the profits, and a whole lot of rubbish like that. So clearly, somebody has to say, this is not how the world is going to be run. Bilateral relationships are not like medieval trade taxes levied at the gate of a city. The bilateral relationships include many things, including shared interests, cultures, and so on. So somebody has to say this is going to stop, or it won't stop. Now, my question is, can India, the BRICS, whatever organization it is, the SCO, actually get together and form something which is effective enough, which buries past differences and creates the sort of power base which can reintroduce the kind of more civilized elements into international relationships? I think there's a very good chance that the answer is yes, but it's not one get together in the SCO which is going to tell us what the outcome is. It's going to be a work of many years. But that's, I suggest, is where we're headed.
Word that David, essentially you're looking at, and you're right, that's going to be taking a lot in terms of how we're going to be looking at this pan out. But Dr. Kumar, David, as well as Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us on the show tonight. But with that, that's all that we have the time for in terms of decoding this for our viewers as well, Sumita.
Absolutely, Vedna. And let's shift our focus onto some other stories that are coming in at this point. In fact, the beginning of the month often marks a key financial activity, salary credits, bill payments, and planning expenses. But just as we plan for our expenses, it's equally important to plan for our investments as well. To encourage this habit, SBI Mutual Fund, in collaboration with Times Network, is launching a nationwide investor awareness initiative that is called Bharat Nivesh Behtar Nivesh Behtar